Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. You know who I am. If you don't, that's to your blessing and advantage. I'm James Jacob Prash from Moriel Ministries. I'm normally with you here on Catching Up with Jacob, but now Jacob is going to have to be caught up somewhere else. At the time you'll be watching this, I'll be speaking in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, on a pre-booked engagement with some wonderful believers in Northern Ireland. Compared to most of the rest of Britain and Europe, there's still a lot of Christians in Northern Ireland on a comparative basis. Not what it once was, but certainly more so than you'll get in England or Scotland or Wales or continental Europe. And that's where I am, so I'm not with you, but I'm glad you're with us. Just one or two comments on the week's events that I just wanted to highlight. Of course, we're consumed with the events in the Middle East and the war in Israel. If you don't know, another young believer in the military in Israel was killed. This time, a young girl, about 21 years of age. Her name is Alina Provosapova. Her parents are Russian Jewish believers. They attend a bilingual Russian Hebrew fellowship in Haifa. Now, Haifa is where my own children are born, my wife's home. I've lived in Haifa many years. And she's only 21. She was an ensign in the Israeli Navy, and she was killed in combat day before yesterday. We just learned about it. Lior, one of the Moriel team members, an evangelist, and a pastor, Yossi, of a congregation we support in Galilee, visited her family today. And as you can imagine, it's devastating. Last week, we, of course, announced the loss of David Ratner, a young believing soldier who was killed near Gaza as well, just a little over a week ago or so. These things are difficult. Most of you know or have heard me point out that most of the believers in the Israeli military are in combat brigades. They volunteer for combat. It's a part of their testimony as they see it. Now, we've been sponsoring two Army brigades. One is actually an Air Force brigade at a frontline air base in Galilee, where airstrikes are launched against Hezbollah. And this is, again, a frontline air base. Serious stuff. And also units of the Golani Brigade. The Golani Brigade are a frontline combat brigade that serve in the Golan Heights and along the Lebanese border. They're facing off Hezbollah as we speak. And there's a number of believers, including sons and daughters of members of the Moriel team, of our branch, the Moriel branch, in Israel, have sons and daughters in these brigades. The reports we've been getting have been wonderful. Terrible losses, terrible situation, and we feel nothing but compassion for the Arab children who Hamas are using as hostages and human shields. Not only have Hamas taken Jewish children as hostages, as usual, they're using their own as hostages. And of course, the BBC and the CNN, not to mention Al Jazeera, are more than happy to blame Israel. It's incredible what's happening in the international media. The lies upon lies. I've tried to answer some of these things on the internet comments, but what do they care? But I've just watched people lie. I've watched stupid left-wing women lie. I've watched Muslims living in the United States lie. You have a growth in international anti-Semitism. Remember, the Hamas Charter is not just against Zionists, it's against Jews. But as we pointed out, and you can watch the leader of Hamas, we've actually webcasted it, saying this is not just about, quote unquote, killing the Zionists and about Palestine. It's about all 510 million square kilometers of the earth and getting rid of the Christians. That's what Hamas says. Yet you've got stupid left-wing people, even naive Christians, blaming Israel for defending itself. Again, we've talked about the idiocy of the left. They're all pro-women and pro-homosexual, ignoring what Hamas and Iran do to and Hezbollah do to homosexuals and the way they treat women. This is the absurdity of these people. They're spiritually blinded. They're truly spiritually blinded. But we are helping these soldiers. Now, you know, the people in the regular Israeli army are called CUWJ, and they pretty much get most of what they need from the army. And they get parcels from their mother, but they get most of their basic needs. But the Israeli army is not made up of the CUWJ, of the regular soldiers. The Israeli army is a civilian army made up of people what are known as miluim. They're like the reserves. They're all civilians. And although they'll get the ammunition and weapons they need, they don't get warm socks, footwear, things like first aid kits, masking tape, practical things ain't batteries. We've been sending a lot of this aid, quite a fair amount, to these two units, one in Air Brigade and one in the Golani. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for the believers in those reserve units to distribute the parcels we've been sending them and things we've been buying for them, and saying, this is for Christians, from Christians who love you and who pray for Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. This is for Christians who say, we love you because Jesus, Yeshua, was a Jew. You gave us our Messiah. Because the New Testament was written by Jews. You not only gave us the Tanakh, the Old Testament, you gave us the New Testament. And we love you because you gave us the New Testament and you gave us Jesus. And we stand with you and we're praying for you and we support you. And we don't care what the world says or the United Nations says or the corrupt media says or corrupt politicians say or what the Islamic world says. We stand with Israel and the Jews. Jesus is a Jew. We stand with Israel. And this, of course, opens doors for opportunity. And don't think it doesn't make an impression on Israelis. They see today it was reported a lynch mob attacked an airplane. A lynch mob in Russia attacked an airplane arriving from Tel Aviv to hang the passengers for being Jews. Hamas in its charter doesn't say it hates Zionists. It says it hates Jews. In the Hadith, the last day will not come until the tree says, there's a Jew, I'm hiding on back of me, come and kill him. That's their religion. It's in their literature. They see the Brooklyn Bridge was closed down by 7,000 Islamic savages, radical Muslim savages. Now, I'm sure there are moderate Muslims who don't approve of this kind of thing. But the ones who closed down the Brooklyn Bridge were savages. Brooklyn is the biggest Jewish population center in New York. And New York is the biggest Jewish population center in the world and in history. Yet the Muslims yesterday closed down, Friday, closed down Grand Central Station. I used to work in Grand Central Station. They closed it down, tens of thousands. What's happening in London, in Paris, in Sydney, Australia, riots, gas the Jews, gas the Jews. They're seeing the world's against them. But they're up there, Frontline Combat Brigade, and they get a parcel. Here's some good food. What do you need? Footwear, socks, first aid kit? Yeah. These are practical things. These are gifts from Bible-believing Christians who love you in the United States, in Great Britain, in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Europe. They stand with you, and they want you to know they're praying for you, and they're not going to abandon you. Hine lo yonum v'lo yishan shomer Israel. As we say, he who keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. It opens the door for witnessing opportunities for real evangelism. These soldiers, they can't deny this. They can't deny, well, everybody hates us. Why are these people standing with us? Why are these people being our friends, speaking up for us, sending us these parcels? Why are they different than the other ones? I've often said, looking at the scriptures, Jesus is coming for a spotless bride. What is God's acid test? How will we know the church is what it's supposed to be for Christ to come back? When they can provoke the Jews to jealousy. What do you have that we don't? I can tell you what we have that you don't. We have your Messiah. That's what we have. We have your Messiah. Provoking them to jealousy. Now, please keep the families of these believers who've lost a son and a daughter, the Ratner family, and also the Pravosopova family in prayer. Children were young. I know what it's like. My son was in a frontline combat brigade. My son was in Israel during a war. It is not an easy thing. And I had already lost a relative in September 11th in New York when the radical Muslims attacked the Twin Towers in Manhattan, my home city. These are not things that are alien to me or things that I only watch on TV. I know what it's like firsthand. I've seen these things. I've seen some terrible terrorist attacks in the aftermath in Israel in the years I've lived there and times I've been there. We know what it's like. And we desperately, desperately need your prayers. Desperately need your prayers. Please keep the believers in prayer. Please keep the Moriel team from the Moriel branch in Israel in prayer. And above all, keep their children in prayer because they have children who serve in the military, in the keva, in the regular military. We need your prayers. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim. Inquire into its welfare. Pray for the witness and testimony of the believers in the military. Most of them are what's known again as Kravi, combat brigades. They volunteer because they see it as part of their testimony to say, we're Israelis, we're Jews, we're what you are. This is our country, and we will defend it from the satanic religion of Islam, at least of radical Islam. And they're there and they're doing it. And so far, we've lost two. We've lost two. I can't tell you when my son's position was, I was speaking at a church in California. I was watching on the news in the green room at a big conference when my son's position was getting hit heavily from Lebanon by Hezbollah a number of years ago. And I didn't know what was happening to my kid. And I know he was there. And his position was getting hit. I saw it on the news. And I had to go out and speak in front of 3,000-4,000 people. It's not easy. It's not easy for these believers and their families. And again, I speak of people I know. I speak of pastors. David Ratner, who was killed, his father is a pastor. I speak, of course, of the children of the Moriel team members. We desperately need your prayers. Now, if you are led of the Lord, and we don't ask for money for Moriel, we never did, we never will. There's been a handful of times, like the Haiti earthquake, when the Chernobyl children had the radioactive poisoning, and Beryl helped bring them to England for medical treatment for leukemia from Chernobyl, and Hurricane Katrina. There's been maybe 3 times where we've asked people to donate money. There was another time, there was a crisis in Africa that we had to deal with, but we've never asked for money for Moriel or for ourselves, never. We assure you, every single dollar, pound, penny, pence will go towards donated. If you are led of the Lord to make a contribution in any country to the believing soldiers, There is a special ministry that just ministers to believing soldiers, practically, materially, as well as spiritually. And I talked to them several days ago, and they told me, we know this is going to be drawn out. They're going to have considerable needs. We have been a financial sponsor and supporter of them, but we need to do something substantial now. And the Lord has been bringing the money in. He's been telling Christians to send contributions. Again, I'm not asking on behalf of Moriel. None of it will go to Moriel. It's going to the believers in the military in Israel. If you're led of the Lord to make a contribution, just go onto our missions page, to the Jerusalem Evangelism Fund, and in the comments write soldiers. Soldiers Fund, or just soldiers. And that's exactly where it will go. We need the money, but we desperately, desperately need the prayers. This is a very ugly situation. As you know, I do not believe the Biden administration is on the side of Israel. I believe they're doing what they have to do because it's an election year coming up, and they're trying to retain Jewish votes and things of that nature, but they've never done anything but betray Israel. The people he surrounds himself with are either incompetent or opposed to Israel. We know of at least 3 Iranian agents in the Biden administration. 3. They've just got another one now, Ali Vaez, instrumental in transferring $6 billion from the United States government to the Iranians to fund terror. The betrayals by Biden and Obama in total amount to $300 billion when you count the fact that they're not enforcing the oil embargoes that Donald Trump did. And I'm not campaigning for Mr. Trump. I'm not making a political statement. I'm simply saying facts. Do not trust the Biden administration. Do not believe him. He's not an honest man. He's not even a compos mentis man. And the people surrounding him are devious people. This Robert Malley, this Jake Sullivan, these are no friends of Israel, and I believe they're no friends of America. Please pray that the Lord would intervene. I'd also really ask again seriously that believers would please pray and keep in prayer the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He is a saved Christian. He is a genuine conservative. He's a constitutional lawyer. He's a constitutionalist. Please keep that brother in prayer, that God would keep his hand on him and protect him and his family. Well, finally, please pray that the Lord would close the mouths of the lying media, because they're lying. As this thing drags on, they're not going to talk about the hostages. They're going to talk about what the Israelis are doing. Just think, not only is it a situation now where Hamas attacks Israeli civilians and, as usual, uses their own, even their own children, as human shields, putting the entrances to the tunnels, to the tunnel network, under schools, hospitals, mosques, and launching rockets from populated civilian areas. So when the Israelis are forced to fire back in self-defense, there's collateral damage that the Israelis tried to minimize. The Israelis have told them to evacuate Gaza City. They've dropped leaflets. They've done everything. They've not targeted Arab civilians. Hamas has targeted Israeli civilians, but Israel has not targeted Arab civilians. They've done everything they reasonably can to limit collateral damage. Hamas is not only holding Israelis hostage and some others, including Americans, Brits, Tanzanians now. I believe the young German girl was killed, murdered. They are holding their own people hostage. Of the aid that so far has entered Gaza, very little of it has gone to the people. Most of it has been taken over by Hamas, which is the government of Gaza. It is, by good report, reliable report, believed that there are at least 500,000 gallons of gasoline and diesel, petrol, stored in those tunnels. Why are they not using it to help their people? They're demanding more before they'll release the hostages. In other words, we're going to hold your hostages. You have to give us oil. You have to give us things we can use to continue our jihad against you before we'll release them. No, release the people. Then once you give us the hostages, we'll let the aid in. No. No, you give us the aid. And they don't care about their people. Moreover, little of that aid thus far has gone to the people of Gaza. It's gone to Hamas. They don't care about their people. They don't. That's just the nature of their religious mentality. They're fundamentalists. They're jihadists. And again, the kind of criticisms coming against Israel and the shameful disgrace of Jews remaining in the Democratic Party with the squad, instead of kicking them out of Congress for disloyalty. There is precedent for that happening in the Civil War. Pro-slavery secessionists were thrown out of Congress during the American Civil War for disloyalty to the United States. Why is Tlaib and Omer and Alexander Ortega-Cortez and Presley and Laurie Bush, why are they not kicked out of Congress? Not even censored. And that's okay with Chuck Schumer. That's okay with Steve Cohen. That's okay with Blumenthal and Spritzer. It's okay with liberal Jewish American politicians. But it's not okay. It's certainly not okay in the eyes of any real justice or any divine conviction about justice. This is what's happening. Such it is. Now I'll leave you in the good hands of my colleagues. I hope to be with you next week. Meanwhile, every blessing in Jesus.